Hi and welcome to the video. My name is Laura Robinson. I'm a sales technology specialist with CRM Online. And today I'm going to take us through a demonstration of building a workflow process in CRM 2011. This is one of the topics that we typically cover in our administration webcasts that we hold live every Thursday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific time. We've covered some other topics in previous videos, such as adding fields and configuring forms and data import, and this is another topic on the agenda that we'll cover. So let's get right into the demonstration. So the workflow that I'm going to build today is one that is going to help me route leads. And I've got leads that come in from all different sources, and they come in as basically cold and qualified data. So what I want this workflow to do is take those leads and analyze where they're coming from according to lead source and route them to the right person so they can be followed up with as quickly as possible. So I'll create a new process here and I'll call it lead routing. I'm going to associate it to the lead and make it a workflow rather than a dialogue and hit OK. And it's going to open up the lead building window for me. Sorry, the workflow building window. Now there are a couple of points to note on this form before we go ahead and get started with configuring the actual routing rules. First of all, we've got this workflow available to run as an on-demand process or as a child process as optional values. And just when I'm creating workflows, I usually select to run it on demand so that I've got the ability to test it whenever I want to. But then what we want to pay attention to is when this workflow is going to start. So we can start the workflow on a number of different variables. We can start it when the record's created, when the record status changes. So for example, lead went from open to qualified, when a record is assigned, when the record fields change, or if a record's deleted. So for this workflow, because I want to base it completely on a field called lead source, I'm going to deselect record is created, and I'm only going to select when that source field changes. So I'll scroll down and find the field, and these are all of my lead fields. Find lead source. And now I'm just going to go ahead and save this as I go along, and I'm going to add a couple of different conditional branches. So workflow goes through in a linear fashion, and it runs through step by step each option. And so the different steps that we can include here are things like checking conditions, and I'll set that up to check the lead source. We can also have waiting conditions. We can create records. We can update records, assign records, send emails, start child workflows, change status, and also stop the workflow. So in this example, I'm going to check some conditions, and we'll give it a description first. And what I want to do is take any lead from lead source equals trade show, and I want to assign it to a team. Now with CRM 2011, we have the luxury of being able to assign records to either users or teams. This is a change. In the past, we could only assign to users. So it really helps us in workflow do some assignments where we don't have to pin it down to an individual. So I'm going to go through and find lead source equals not that value. We'll go ahead and do trade show. So because a trade show lead is typically a little bit less qualified, I'm going to assign this to my inside sales team. So any lead that comes in from a trade show will go to that team. The next step I want to do, and I want to do it just below this first step, is assign the record. And I can enter a description, which I'll just skip over for the sake of speed here. And I'm going to look for the teams. You'll notice I've got a few different teams. I'm going to choose inside sales and hit OK. So that's our first branch. Now for the next branch, you'll notice where I'm clicking. I'm going to click to the left of this main group here because I want to add a step that is in line with my original check condition. And that matters because it's going to walk through these steps in a linear manner or fashion. So the next condition I'm checking is if the lead source equals an employee referral. Now this is a little bit more of a warm handoff, a warm transition. It's not as cold as a trade show lead might be. And so what I want to do is I want to assign this lead to an individual person. So again, we'll do lead source equals employee referral. Save and close. Now I want to click on this step and I want to make sure that I am assigning the record to the right person. And in this case we're simply going to assign it to Bob. Let's say Bob is the follow-up person for anything referrals. And I want to do some other things here too. So because this is more of a warm transition, I want to make sure that Bob is aware of it and present. It's top of mind for him. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to send him an email that just basically gives him a heads up that he's got a new lead. So I can type in a description here if I want, but basically I want to create a new message. Now I could also use a template if I had a template to use, and that's in our email templates in the settings. But I'll go ahead and create that new message. Now you'll notice on the right hand side here I have a bunch of dynamic values, and this is where I can select fields and embed them in my email, and these are called field slugs, and it's going to take the value of whatever that is from that record and put it in here. So I'll have this email come from whoever the record is created by, and of course it's going to go to the new owner, that's Bob, and I'm going to put a subject here, and I'm going to say you have a new lead for, and give it some identifiable information. I'll just say company name. And in this section, and this is the body of the email, we can type in any details, enter any details here. I could add an email attachment as well as other kinds of details around the email. So I might want to put in just some details like created date and so on and so forth. I'll go ahead and leave that as is for now. And the next thing I want to do, in addition to sending Bob an email, so it's front and center for him, I also want to set up a follow-up task for him that's due a day after that lead's been modified. So let's go ahead and create that task record. And again, it's listed right below my last step here, and I'm going to choose to create a task. Now you'll see if I drop this down, I can create a number of different items. I'm going to choose task and set the properties on that task. So this works a lot like the email we just set up. I'll go ahead and enter some details here for Bob. I could put in something in the main box here. I'm going to say the owner of the task is the owner of the lead. Now I want to point out that in these due dates, or any dates in our dynamic values, we've got the ability to set different parameters here. So I'm going to set this to 1 day after the lead was modified. So that should capture whenever that lead source was updated. That will be the stamp of the last modified date, and we'll set this task to be 1 day after that due. So save and close. Now you'll notice if you've got an error at any point, you'll get a red X, or if something's incomplete. When we complete our steps, the X goes away. Now I can add some more conditional branches here if I wanted to, but I'm just going to go ahead and leave it at these 2 conditions. I can add more later if I want, but I'm going to go ahead and just stop the workflow here, and we'll stop it as succeeded. And now I'm going to save, and I'll save and close that. You'll notice it's just a draft, so I can't actually test it until I go ahead and activate this workflow. And this is important to know. So if you have your workflow starting when a record's created and you've got users using CRM, You want to be aware of this so you don't have workflows fire accidentally. And that's why I chose to run this on demand if I needed to, and I could at a later date trigger the start workflow when records created or so on. So let's go ahead and test this out. I'm going to go into leads and create a new lead. And I'll just key in some really basic information. Just populate some of that data. Now remember, we want to test out the lead source, so I'm going to go ahead and set this as a trade show, and that should fire off the first condition. I'm going to hit save and new, and I'm going to set up a new lead that is based on the lead source of employee referral, because remember, we want that one to go to Bob. And we'll go ahead and add that lead source. I'm just going to go ahead and save. Now workflow is running behind the scenes, so if you're just a typical user, you're going to continue to use CRM as you always have, and the power users or the admin folks are going to go ahead and create these workflows and set them to run. I'm going to just minimize this lead here for a second, and actually let's go ahead and I'm going to reopen the lead for Laura, and let's see what's shaking here. So in this lead for Laura Robinson, we can see now that the owner is inside sales because we chose that lead source for trade show. If I take a look at the workflow process that has ran, it is listed as succeeded. So this is an easy one. I'm going to close this lead and open up Brett Robinson again. And we can see here that the owner is now Bob. Now remember, we had a couple of different actions happen after we assigned it. We wanted to send Bob an email and also create a task for him to follow up with this lead in the next day. So if I look at activities, we should see that follow-up task, and here it is. And then we should also see a closed activity, which is the email. So it looks like our workflow fired off successfully. Now a couple of tips about when you're testing workflows. It's rare to get it right on the first try. I may go back and adjust some items in this workflow myself. But basically, get the bulk of it done and test it out a couple times and then make any adjustments as needed. So with that, I want to thank you for your participation and have a wonderful day.